I think it's been fluid. It's been a fluid definition for me for a long time, and I think in a lot of ways it can have a negative connotation to it. Hey, I'm just going to bear down and grit it out. I've got to have grit to get through all these things and whatnot. But I think it's just another arrow in your quiver that you can have. I don't want to have to be gritty, but I want to be able to know that I can be gritty. And I want to be able to know that if I'm in a situation in my life that I still have the ability to dive into that grit situation.
Hey, what's up, everybody? We have an incredible topic today. I think this is going to be something that you're going to get a lot of value out of. And it is something that we don't talk about enough as men, as Christian disciples, men who want to show up as leaders in our homes, in our workplace, in our churches, in our communities. And by the way, the world needs us to do that. And so lean into this episode with me and Justin today, because I think you're going to have some new thoughts, maybe some new actions, and we want to walk beside you as you transform into the man that you can be. Justin, how are you feeling today, man?
Man, I feel good. It's going to be a great day. Got tickets to go see the Humpback of Notre Dame. And so we're going tonight. I have no idea what the story is about, but it's it's a play in Houston. And so we're going as a family, and I'm pretty excited about that. Got a half a day off. Yeah, half a day off today. So it's been a pretty chill morning, which I needed. And I guess we'll talk about that sometime. A little bit of margin in my life, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah,
dude, I have all kinds of questions about what you're about to go watch, that play, The Humpback of Notre Dame. I have no idea what it's about either.
I have no idea, but the girls are excited about it, and so I'm excited as well. And it's kind of a nice little break from the daily routine and doing something that I'm not used to doing, I guess. So pumped about that, man. Shut down the office a little bit early today, and get to work with you for a little bit, and then just relax for the rest of the day before we go down to Houston. How about yourself?
Love it, dude. Same. I'm staring at a trip that we have next week. This weekend will be full of work, preparing for it to do some teaching and leading groups. But at the end of the day, man, it is Friday as we're filming this, and I see a light at the end of the tunnel, at least for today, before I jump back into work tomorrow. And we're about to shoot this podcast episode that everybody's listening to. I think both of us rely on what we're about to talk about quite a bit. And so you ready to dive into it?
I like it. I do have a confession to make real quick, though.
Okay.
So I think it was the last podcast we talked about drifting and getting stuck in social media. Dude, I am down a rabbit hole with these World Cup clips of people from Europe coming to visit the United States and eating like barbecue and going to Buc-ee's. I bet I've spent more time on social media this week than I have in probably the last year combined, just watching these. I mean, it gives me so much hope. Like, I don't know, man. There's just something about it that, man, I've spent so much time watching these videos. So I'm going to confess that right now. I fell into the drift this week, but I think it was all good things, man. It was awesome.
Well, let's make something useful out of it. What are you taking away from those videos? It's been so inspiring.
Man, it's just fun to see. I think people that don't live in the United States have this perception of the United States because of what the media shows them. And then they come here and they visit, and it's completely opposite of what they think. And man, it's just been inspiring. We live in such an amazing country and have so much opportunity and freedom. And for other people to see that and to recognize it, man, it just melts my heart because I mean, we're talking about grit today, and it took some gritty individuals to provide the freedoms that we have today, going back to 250 years now, right? And so just watching these videos and seeing how excited people are, and I can't stop doing it, man. I am locked in on these videos, and I'm not a big soccer guy, but man, I'm thankful that the World Cup is here right now. It's like perfect timing. It's awesome.
All right, I got to confess something too then. You confess something, I got to confess something.
All right.
I had no idea that was happening, that the World Cup was happening, that anything was happening. Dude, I must be out of the worldly loop of information. I don't know.
I'm about to
because
spam your Instagram with just videos of people eating barbecue. It's
well,
so awesome.
I probably do see barbecue related stuff pretty often, but yeah, not sports necessarily.
It is so awesome. Like it really is. And so, yeah, I'm telling you, I've spent so much time sharing videos and clips of, people from Japan that are eating barbecue. It's awesome. It really is. So that's my
Well,
confession. Yeah. Had to get that
okay.
out. Yeah, no
Well,
doubt.
confessions done. Now let's dive in to our gritty topic today. So on this episode, we're continuing our conversation from our last episode. So if you're listening to this and you haven't watched that or listened to it, maybe go listen to it and then come back to this one. You don't have to, but it might be helpful for you. Last time we talked about drift, something that is incredibly important to understand and something that all of us deal with as disciples of Christ. Today, we wanted to explore a bit more what it takes to not just not drift, but to be consistent with your discipleship, your leadership, and who you're developing yourself to be as a man. And so, Justin, man, I'm going to throw it to you right away. Let's define grit. What is it? How do we know if we have it? And let's kind of jump off from there.
Oh man, defining it. So I think it's been fluid. It's been a fluid definition for me for a long time, and I think in a lot of ways it can have a negative connotation to it. Hey, I'm just going to bear down and grit it out, and I've got to have grit to get through all these things and whatnot. But I think it's just another arrow in your quiver that you can have. I think I told you earlier. I don't want to have to be gritty, but I want to be able to know that I can be gritty. And I want to be able to know that if I'm in a situation in my life that I still have the ability to dive into that grit situation. I mean, definition of it, I think if you asked, 100 people, probably 99% of them would say it's just digging deep and, being able to put one foot in front of the other when times get difficult or you're in a difficult situation, which is true. That is the right definition, um, in my mind. But yeah, that's kind of the way I define it. How about you, Mark?
Definitely similar, but there's this there's this thought I constantly have about anything when we're defining it. So grit, as an example, to me seems like something you would rely on when there is either pain or opposition or resistance. It's not just I'm tired, so I'm going to show up. It's when there's something actively pushing against you that you've got to actively fight. And so I think grit is different than willpower in that regard. Willpower is like, I'm just going to show up whether I'm tired or not. That's a muscle. It fatigues. You run out of willpower. Grit seems like something different to me, where it is an active process pushing back on something that's pushing on you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. I love that. I think you're spot on there because, especially with the comparison of willpower, because I think you sign up for something, an endurance race, you're going to have willpower. But I think you're spot on. Is there a moment if during that race or whatever we're doing where you're going to have grit? And so that's a good distinction between the two for sure. Love it.
Cool. Well, let's start putting some stuff on the table, man. When have you experienced a need for grit in your life?
Oh man, just recently, I did that 51-mile ruck, and
That micro dosy.
yeah, I microdosed a little ruck in Austin, and so I mean, I think as it relates to your definition for it, that, grit is that ability to put one more step forward, to put your foot forward one more time. And so I think that's probably the most recent. But in my personal life and professional life, it seems like I've had some situations that have arisen in the last couple of weeks that I've got to make a decision. I can't just muscle through it, right? I have to make a decision. Hey, it's time to be a little gritty in this situation, and um, know that I'm going to get stronger by taking the next step, even when I'm hurting at that moment and getting closer. I don't want to have the end goal in line as it relates to grit. Like, I don't want to start something and be like, I'm going to have to be gritty the entire time. I want to be prepared for it. And then if there's a situation during that event where I have to tap into grit, then I can tap into it.
Dude, I have this this weird version of grit I would point to in my experience. Back when I was a paramedic, you were a firefighter, you get it, the sleep deprivation, all of the negative consequences of that. And for me, I always felt the best when I was energetic and could think through difficult things, true life and death scenarios, right? Like you got to think on your feet, you got to be quick, you got to be able to recall information really well. Um, but when you've gone 2 or 3 days with no sleep and you're still working on a shift, what I observed is my performance can't dip just because I'm sleep deprived. And I'm not advocating for, high performance and sleep deprivation, but one of the things that I had to finally tell myself is that I cannot stop showing up in my mind just because I'm tired. Like people need me to show up with excellence, whether or not I feel like it or not. And it was that experience that kind of taught me about grit. And I kind of use that as a framing all the time now is it's a thing you can pull out when you need it or when you're aware that you need it. You don't live by it all the time because that would be exhausting and you would simply just burn out, I think.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that you can use whenever you feel like you're in an impossible situation.
Hmm.
And so hopefully you're not living your life in an impossible situation constantly, right? And so grit is, like you said, it's just a tool that when you feel like you're in an impossible situation, you'll be able to reach back into the quiver and pull that sucker out and keep going and maintain in your sense and with mine as well as a medic and fireman, still be professional, still give the best care that you can have. Um, but when you're in an impossible situation, it's that one tool that you'll be able to dive into. You don't want to live your life in an impossible situation just relying on grit.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
good,
you,
man.
you'd be a miserable person if that was you, right? Just walking around gritty all the time.
Well, aren't there a lot of guys out there like that? Like they say things like grit, grind, willpower, show up whether I want to or not, do hard things, and then they're miserable to be around.
Yeah, 100%. Like I'm not. I don't want to have that mentality and then come home at night and just be miserable to my wife and my kids. I mean, I probably have done that in my life,
Yeah.
but is it worth having that mentality for 10 hours of the day only to ruin relationships and not be as loving or caring to the people that you care or love the most about?
No is the answer.
Yeah, no, right,
Spoiler alert, everybody. No is
right.
the answer.
It's
There's
just
no
no.
use in being a gritty man, like doing hard things and you excel at that if you're wrecking your relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's explore this, man. I was thinking about this before the record button was pressed here today, and it is the difference between how we would define grit as a disciple of Jesus versus defining grit as a man of the world. And what are your thoughts on that? Is there a difference? If so, what is it?
Yeah, I think everything that we've talked about so far in the podcast and even this topic is applicable to our faith. And there's going to be times where being in the Word just seems impossible. Showing up to church seems impossible. Showing up to whatever your ministry is just seems impossible. I don't think it's a negative thing to recognize that, hey, I just don't feel like studying the Word today. I don't feel like praying today. I don't feel like whatever today. Um, it's the same situation as if you were doing something physical. You still have to, I don't say you have to, but you still can use that same grittiness to say, hey, no matter the circumstance, no matter what's going on in my life, the busyness of life, right now, this is the important thing in my life, and I'm gonna have to use grit to get through it. And so, yeah, I mean, it applies to our spiritual life just as much, and in the same way as it does to our physical life as well.
Dude, I think there's so much we could go into with this, the difference between biblical grit, not that the word grit is in the Bible, right? But the difference between biblical grit and worldly grit. And I have this very specific thing in mind when I think about that.
Okay.
When I look at men who are self-described like tough guys, right? And today we're just calling them gritty people, gritty guys. What I think is from a worldview is grit positions you against other people.
Okay.
I'm going to
Keep
do it.
keep explaining.
I'm going to do it in spite of what people think of me. I'm going to do it because people said I couldn't. I'm going to do it in opposition to other people. And so from a worldly perspective, it's almost like we're positioning ourselves against other people. I think from a scriptural perspective, grit might be defined more as something like I'm doing it for other people. And it's a complete reframe in your mind. For example, yeah, sure, I could get up early and read my Bible, and I do. But if I'm in that impossible life situation where it's really hard to get up at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock or whatever I need to do to read scripture before my day starts, and the only reason I'm doing it is to check the box to make sure I did it. This has actually happened to me in the past. I've done this before. Confession time. I've brushed aside my family time at times to make sure I go check that box. It's like in opposition to other people, I'm going to grit and grind through some of this stuff. But the reframe for me has been, I'm learning scripture so that I know how to love people. I'm reading my Bible so that I know God, I know who Jesus is, I know how to live my life according to him, and I'm getting better at loving other people. And so if that's taking away from my ability to show up for my family rather than adding to it, then like I got some stuff to work on. A really specific example I'll give, maybe some guys can relate to this, but there have been times when I was not showing up really well in this regard, reading my Bible and getting my quiet times in, where in the morning I got so focused on just doing it and getting it done that my daughter would walk in and interrupt my flow in prayer or something like that. I'd get super frustrated and be like, get
Right.
out of here. I
Yeah.
wouldn't tell her that, but I would be thinking that, get out of here, rather
Yeah.
than recognizing the opportunity to show her some love and some connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like we've both fallen into that trap quite a bit. That happened to me this past week as well. I don't get a whole lot of alone time, and I think it's super important to have some solitude. Just I'm around my staff at work, all day long, and around my family, which I love, and it's a blessing. This week, I had the opportunity to have about 3 hours just by myself, and so I've got a book that I'm reading right now, and spent 2.5, 3 hours just reading that book. And then my daughter comes home, and I was in the middle of a chapter, and she walks in and she's telling me about her evening, and I could feel the frustration, building inside of me, where I wanted to just say, I've got 3 pages left, leave me alone. And
Hmm.
fortunately, I caught that thought, and I was able to put the book down and say, hey, tell me what's going on. How was it? Yada, yada. And, but yeah, so I think we both had the opportunity to experience that. And most men probably have as well.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, if we're following all I won't name drop, I guess, but if we're following all the grit gurus online, man, there just seems to be so much anger wrapped up in it.
I know, right?
You know what I mean?
Well,
It's
yeah,
like I'm doing this in spite of, like slay the demons, all this anger that we're just pointing a direction. But dude, that like I don't see that anywhere in scripture. I do think there's a role for anger in our life. I do, and maybe we can explore that. But I
all
don't
right.
see that as a basis for how we're showing up day to day in our life.
I have another confession. This is going to be the Justin and Mark confession episode, I guess. And it really is. It just applies to me. I do have to tap into that anger side of grit at times to get motivated. Like there are times when my discipline fails and I need motivation. And so, for example, and I'll use it. This is probably wrong, and I'm recognizing it. But I will use that to motivate. Like I will walk into the gym and need that anger. And as soon as I'm able to get started, then that anger flees and I'm back to being normal. But for that, 2 or 3 minutes that it takes me to get started, I'll tap into that. I'm just going to grind it out today mentality. Um, and so I do wrestle with that because I like to walk into the gym thinking, okay, I'm going in here to destroy some things. And then as soon as I get in there and get in the routine, like you can come up and talk to me now, and it's like, hey, what's up? What are you listening to? Oh man, I'm jamming Hillsong right now on my headset, you know, on certain days. And so, yeah, I struggle with that, finding that balance. Like with this last man standing ruck, there's going to be a time during that ruck where I'm going to have to rely on anger. And for that moment, I think that's okay. Like I think it's fine to tap into that as long as it's not carrying over into every aspect of your life. What are your thoughts on that? Am I completely out of my mind with that?
No, man, I don't think you are. And if we were to say something like anger has no role or just pretend like it's not there, we'd lose everybody listening because that's not the real life human experience for men. Like anger is real and we have to call it out as real. We have to talk about it. And the our role is to make sure that we point it a direction that's in a positive
Yep.
that goes a positive direction. You know what I mean? And so the analogy of working out and using your anger to kind of get into that mode, I think a lot of guys will relate to that. Certainly myself too. And that would be an example of pointing it a positive direction. The energy is there. All
Right.
anger is really is a signal. And if we're taking that signal and we're pointing that energy a direction that's not at somebody, then I think we're using part of the way that God designed us in a positive direction. I don't think God said don't be angry. I think God repeatedly though said if you're angry at your brother, you need to do something about that, right? And so that's a Mark thought that I'm trying to explore through scripture myself is like we can't pretend anger doesn't exist. It is a useful tool if it pops up and we direct it a positive direction. It's an emotion is all it is, you know?
Yeah. But I think you're right. Going back to these influencers, that's their shtick, right? Just gonna great grind and go, blah blah, blah, just blah blah blah. Like that can work momentarily, but do you have the opportunity or do you have the ability to turn that off? And then you know as believers, do you have that opportunity to turn it off in a moment's notice when someone approaches you? And I'm in the zone right now, but Mark Hummel comes up and asks me something about whatever. Can I turn that off and be more Christ-like in that moment instead of saying, "Hey, Mark, get away from me. I'm on my fifth set. Leave me alone." Can I turn that off right now and say, "Hey, man, what's going on? Let's chit chat." And so the opportunity and the ability to do that, I think that shows spiritual maturity, and that is something that I've absolutely have had to learn over the course of 30 35 years, especially in the gym and in my daily life as well.
Asked this question once online on it was on Facebook. And for those that might not know, part of my story is I'm a business coach. And so I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and do a lot of life, business, and faith coaching. And the question I wanted to explore was what role does anger play in your business? And I just wanted to know how people would respond. And it was so interesting. A lot of people used anger as the reason they were building something in the first place. Like I've got to prove to these other people who said I couldn't do it that I can do it.
Yeah.
And it had a real tangible appeal to a lot of people. Like, yeah, anger has a critical role. But then one guy, all he said was, it's not a fruit of the spirit.
Hmm.
And I was like, huh, wait, mic drop. And so perhaps it's a useful thing if we happen to be experiencing it, but it's not a thing to pursue on its own.
No, absolutely. That's perfectly said, Mark. Like perfectly said. And that's man, you nailed that for sure. That's another mic drop right there.
Yeah. So back to grit. It's like, well, what is grit? Is it anger? I don't think so.
No, I don't
Because
think so.
that's anger is an emotion. It's a signal. It's fleeting. You can't just pull anger out and use it. And we're not called to do that. But grit, something different, a tool that we can develop for ourselves, a mindset we can develop for ourselves and pull it out when we need it.
I agree. And I think that you and I both have experienced this. And when you're building something, whether it's in your personal life or your spiritual life, there's always going to be people that are trying to knock you back down or trying to question what you're doing, or they're going to question, so many things. They want to, instead of you elevating them, they want to bring you back down to their level. So there's always some kind of form of resistance, right? And that's in anything that we do, but particularly, know, just talking about our spiritual life. Have you ever been on a spiritual high and the devil used somebody else as a tool to try to knock you off that high or
Oh,
knock
yeah.
you out of that high, right?
Yeah.
And
Sometimes
so
your brothers.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. It could be intentional or it could be unintentional too. Right. Um, there's things that I do in my marriage that make other people uncomfortable, like just chivalrous things. And people have made comments about it, good people that I absolutely love and adore, but they've made comments about it to where they've tried to make me feel guilty, especially if we're in a group setting. And it's like, man, I'm not going to change the way I am. If you're offended by it, then elevate yourself. But this is a really good thing to do in my marriage. My point being is I think grit could be aligned with, and the reason that we have the opportunity to show grit is there's always going to be some kind of resistance. Like anything that we do, especially for the kingdom, there's going to be some kind of resistance. And being able to tap into grit um, to counter that resistance instead of quitting. And I think it just gives you confirmation that you're building something worth building if there's that resistance. But if you can't fight that resistance by tapping into grit, it could be easily, give you an opportunity to quit. And so, kingdom speaking, you're going to fight resistance. If you're able to tap into grit and fight that resistance to build something that you feel like God is leading you to build, you should be able to figure out a way to tap into grit as many times as you can.
Yeah.
And that's a positive.
Yeah, man, that's so good, Justin. Like, as you're explaining that, I'm envisioning myself on a battlefield, running out there ready to fight for the king, and I did not bring my sword. It's like I didn't equip myself to actually be in the battle. And it also reminded me of James 4:7, a verse I talk about all the time. Submit yourself, therefore, to the Lord and resist the devil, and he will flee from you. That's two separate commands, right? Submit yourself to God is always our first step, whatever we're going through. But then I think we got to get a little gritty. We got to put some skin in the game and resist the devil. And I'm not talking about willpower or doing it on your own necessarily, because if we get the order right, submit yourself to God and resist the devil, it's a different recipe than if we were to say resist the devil then submit yourself to God. And so once we've checked the box, if you will, through submission, then we've got to have some active skin in the game, develop ourselves into a man who's tough enough to resist. And that takes some grit, man.
It does. And I think you and I both realize, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners realize as well, life can be hard. And we expect it to be hard. We expect that there will be hard times that, arise through, you know, our entire life. And being able to recognize those hard times and being able to not stop and quit, I think that will one, it defines your character. But I don't think most men fail because life gets hard. I think most men stop when life gets hard. And so being able to tap into your grit when life gets hard, because it is going to happen, being able to tap into that and get past it. I mean, that defines so much of who you are as a man, and especially as a follower and believer, because we know that as a believer, life is going to get difficult. I mean, we have an adversary that, he's coming to kill, steal, and destroy. And so being able to fight that, knowing that that's coming, being able to sharpen your sword, is invaluable. And, just relating it to grit, there's going to be times in our spiritual walk that we're going to have to be gritty. We're just going to have to be.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some examples you've got from scripture that you would say that's a gritty guy?
I mean, David obviously was pretty gritty. He was a pretty gritty individual. Paul, when Paul was in Arabia, he was, Paul had to use grit a lot of times in his life. Just the circumstances and the trials that he went through. Um, I think there's something about that. Something that I love about Paul as it relates to grit is he didn't just one day wake up and become this great missionary, right? He had to go through so many trials and tribulations over a long period of time, things that you and I can't even imagine, right? And if you don't think he had to deal with some grit in order to become who he is or who he was ultimately, man, I don't know what to tell you, but that was a gritty dude. And so David pops to the top of my head. David and Goliath. That took a lot of grit to be able to run out on the battlefield by himself with, just the slingshot. That was a pretty gritty situation, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with you. Job pops up for me.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard for me to even think about grit without Job, man. And, I think there's a few ways to interpret the book of Job, and there's obviously a lot smarter people have worked on this than me. But I think of all the things we've been talking about: impossible situations, active resistance, and being the kind of person that can stay on mission regardless of those things. Job went through everything he went through, all of his wealth being destroyed, his family being killed. He went through all these health issues that were things that we would barely be able to bear ourselves these days. And he still did not curse God or come off mission with his focus on God. And man, when I think about grit, I hope that I can be that kind of man. That's the kind of man I'm trying to develop myself into actively every day by putting in the reps when times are good, so that when things get hard, it's not foreign to me to still put in the reps.
Yeah, so you're microdosing.
Microdosing, that's it.
Microdosing a little grit. I like it, Mark.
Yep. There goes our favorite phrase. We're microdosing.
Yeah, I know that. I think next podcast I'm going to wear my microdose shirt.
We should make some shirts, man. Microdose.
No, I've got one. I'm going to wear it the next podcast.
There you go. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, you're right. And we started this off talking about it's just an arrow in the quiver, and it is, and it's not something. It's just like anything else, Mark. You can take it to the extreme. Like you can take discipline to the extreme. You can take grit to the extreme. You can take perseverance to the extreme. And if you do that, you're just a miserable person. And so, as you said earlier, if you just walk around gritty all the time, I mean, people are not going to like you very much, right? It's going to close a ton of doors. They may use you in a situation, when they're in a spot in their life where they're like, well, I'm in a bad spot. I can call Justin because he's always gritty and miserable. And so he can help me out.
But I
don't want to be
miserable dude.
Yeah, right. Like, I know I could feel better about myself if I talk to Justin because he's always miserable, just walking around mean mugging all the time, gritty. But I don't want to be that person, right? I'd rather have someone say, man, I can call Justin because I know he's been in situations where he's had to tap into that grit.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than I'm going to call Justin because I can feel better about myself because he's always miserable. Man, I've been that person too.
I'm glad you're not now.
Life lessons.
Life lessons.
Yeah.
Well, what
and good friends and good friendships, right?
Yes.
Good men in my life to say, Justin, why are you so miserable all the time? Man, I'm just trying to be hard and gritty. Well, you're miserable to be around. All right. Thanks,
glad you brought that up, man. That's probably one of the most important things to think about. It's like when we're developing ourselves into a tough, gritty guy who can push through adversity and opposition, one of the things that has to be true is that we're not isolated.
Yeah.
And I shared with you last year or earlier this year, I can't remember, not too long ago, I was isolated in a certain situation and going through something, man. And it was pretty tough to be on my own, gritting my way through it. And the minute I shared it with you, and I think one other person shortly after that, is like the whole thing lost weight. It's like, it's not even an issue anymore.
Yeah. I can't express the power of community. We could do multiple podcasts on the importance and the power of community, especially in manhood. But yeah, I mean, it just not isolating yourself it's near and dear to my heart for sure.
Well, let's bring it home, man. So we got to tell guys who are listening to this what we recommend they do in order to build that grit muscle, that tool that they can pull out when they feel active opposition in their life and they need to stay on mission.
Yeah, I don't want to continue to go back to microdosing stuff because I don't necessarily think that applies to this. I would tell men as it concerns to grit is don't judge God by the work in your life that you don't see yet. Right, the fruits of the labor they may take some time to sprout, and so you don't want to walk around like we've talked about and kind of joked about, just being gritty all the time. Continue to be consistent in the word, consistent in your relationships, consistent in your friendships and community. And if you don't see something that's sprouting right away, don't get frustrated and give up. Just continually to prepare yourself for that situation to present itself. And if it does, hopefully it doesn't. Like, hopefully you can go through life and, you're never going to have to tap into that mindset of grittiness. But if you do have to tap into it, make sure that it's there. And so prepare for it. Be in the word, prepare yourself, sharpen your sword, be consistent, continue in community. And if that situation ever arises, you'll be there ready for it. You can tap into that grit. How about yourself?
Man, that's really good. Yeah, I was just talking to my son about this actually earlier this week, and the thing we were talking about was temptation, and he was struggling with some temptation, and I always admire his honesty
That's
and
awesome.
just his ability to be focused on God and to lean into James more than I ever would, which is confess your sins to your brothers. And like my son is just so, I just really admire that about him. He's so inspiring. But he was sharing some things with me, struggling with some temptation, and we are talking through it. And one of the things that came out was, of course, James 4:7, submit yourself to God. You can't just sit back and try to resist the devil all on your own, because it's a losing battle. Like scripture teaches us that. We see it in our own day to day. If we're not first focused on God, then we're going to lose the battle. So there's that. But then when we get to some practical things we can start thinking about is we have to develop our skills, develop the grit in the good times. We can't expect that we're suddenly going to be gritty when we have opposition and we're tired and we're alone and things are hard and life is impossible. We have to be doing things when it feels good to build that mindset. And so I want to give some really practical advice. Sometimes it's as easy as making sure you are consistently exercising your body. And I'm sure you would agree with this. Tell me if
100%.
you don't, but like one of the best ways for a man to develop a grit mindset is to grind it out in the gym, to make sure he is challenging himself physically. And you're in charge of what that means, right? Whatever your level of health is.
Yeah. Right.
But to make sure that you're doing something with your body that develops that neuro pathway of grit and grind so that you can rely on that when you need to spiritually or emotionally or wherever else it pops up in your life. And there's a lot of research supporting that exercise makes you more resilient. So that's one thing. But then with your mind, learning something and purposefully and consistently learning something develops a stronger mind, right? And so I'm not talking about becoming a theologian or an expert in a space, although you could. I'm just talking about consistently learning something most days of the week,
Yeah.
right? Maybe as part of your morning routine or throughout your day, read a book, listen to a podcast, just continually grow your mind. And so that's the mind and the body. And then man, in your spiritual life, when things are good, you better be praying. Do not rely on prayer just when things are bad. You've got to put in the reps when things feel good so that when things feel bad, it's not all about you and it's not all a pity party and it's not anger driven. It's because you spend time with your Lord regularly and it's just another day. It feels different, but it's just another day. And so you're not going to walk into it like now you're experiencing something new because life is hard.
Yeah. And that's awesome. That's a outstanding way to end this. And I think you're spot on, especially in all three aspects of it. And I'm glad you nailed the resistance, the physical side of it. Like it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but you're right. It is a great way to build resist or what's the word I'm looking for?
Resilience.
Yeah, resilience. Thank you. It is a really good way to, and it could be just going for a walk around the neighborhood or whatever it is, and then spending time in prayer when things are going well. It seems like we have a tendency, and men and women as well. When things are going well, it's like, okay, I can stop praying now.
Hmm.
And then I feel convicted when that happens to me. It's like, man, I feel like I'm using God as, as a crutch. And so, man, I think you nailed that, Mark. That is an outstanding way to end this thing.
Appreciate you, Justin. And as funny as it is, we're going to put this episode out for everybody. But behind the scenes, we're going to hit stop recording, and then we're going to hit start recording, and we're going to film the next episode. So definitely be ready for the next one, because we're kind of treating this like a series. We went from drift. We're talking about grit, because we not only want you to not drift away from God or the things that are important to you in life, but we want you to develop that muscle, that grit that will help you stay on mission when things oppose who you're developing yourself into and who God's developing you into. Next, we're going to talk about margin. How do we actually create margin in our life that allows us to stay consistent with our quiet times, consistent with our development spiritually, physically, mentally? It's a really important topic.
It is extremely important.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, remember, everybody, if you're still here listening, we would be honored if you would share this episode with your friends, your small groups, anybody that you care about and want to help develop as a disciple of Christ. That is what we are here to do. So until the next one, see ya.